Good evening, New Year 6 parents. My name is Guy Hewson. I am the Director of Learning for Pre-16, and it's really lovely to welcome you onto this EAP webinar this evening. This is specifically aimed at how we support your children through the languages, and Ms Koshy is going to lead us through the evening, supported by a number of our West Island students. And thank you, students, for giving up your time this evening. As we go through the presentation this evening, if you can wait until the end, but when we hit the end of the presentation, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you've got any questions, I will invite you to ask questions at that stage. So if you can just hold off from asking questions at the start, because as we move through, your questions might be answered. I will leave Ms Koshy to present to you, parents, and I'll just come in at the end just to finish off any last questions and just share some details just ahead of next Friday's visit for your children and for your on-site visit and welcome to West Island School. So Ms Koshy, I will hand over to you and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hewson. It's an absolute delight to be talking to P6 parents, and I hope some students are also watching, because the young people who are going to be on a little bit later are very excited to talk you through what they know about EAP. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen with you. Here we go. All right. Mr. Hewson, are you able to see everything? Are you able to see my screen? I think so. Okay. So I'm head of EAP, and this webinar is about academic literacy and the multilingual pathways at WIS. There are so many options for how students can support themselves with academic reading and writing at WIS, and also how they would be learning through languages. So welcome. Hopefully you know that EAP stands for English for Academic Purposes. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's called that. The EAP stands for the academic part of all learning at secondary school. And there is a lot of that, as you know. So EAP has been at West Island since its inception, back in 1992 when the school began. We had EAP students then who are multilingual, bilingual students from across the world. And since 2016, we've actually expanded the range of what our faculty does to include all bilingual and multilingual learners, because academic English is actually a language in itself. And academic English is the language of school, and it is actually a foreign language to everyone. And we also have a number of multilingual learners for whom English is their strongest language, but they might still need some support with academic language. And we've got this beautiful symbol of yin and yang, which is an ancient Chinese symbol, as some of you will know. And it's also about balance of social, emotional, as well as languages. And actually being that multilingual, balanced, bilingual is really, really important. Who are the EAP team? This is us. That is a very old photo of myself, which happens to be hanging around the school still. We have Ms. Pedraza, who is joining us, who is also a teacher of French and Spanish, so multilingual herself and very, very aware of the needs of multilingual students. Sharon Lee, who comes to us from Korean International School and has been teaching here for this year, is an IGCSE specialist. And we have Ms. Yoon, who's our educational assistant, who is actually a qualified teacher herself, but is now specializing in some EAP expertise. All of us teach across year groups, so we're very, very familiar with the curriculum at WIS and also the needs of students. I teach TOK and in IB support program in the IB diploma. And of course, I've taught English A and I'm qualified to teach English B as well. So we all have linguistics backgrounds in this team. So what are we going to do today? So I'd like to cover today some questions that many of you have about your students and what they're going to do when they get here. This webinar will cover firstly the language choices and the multilingual pathways. It's a little bit confusing for parents sometimes, so if you don't completely get it, please don't worry. There are email pathways and other ways that you can get in touch with us. I will also cover what is academic literacy. As I touched upon, it is difficult for many, many students, and it is a new thing in secondary school. So if your child has been doing pretty well through primary school, it is entirely natural and normal for them to find secondary school a little bit confusing and a little bit difficult with all the new teachers and subjects. And we're going to tell you a little bit about how EAP supports the middle years program, which is where your students will be from year 7 to year 9. Okay, so those are the 3 big areas we're covering in this webinar. So I'm going to start off with the language pathways. Now, if you receive a letter tomorrow, which you might do because the letters are coming out as we speak, you might receive a letter suggesting some EAP support for your young person. Please don't panic or worry about that. It is probably because we have some information that might suggest this is a good pathway, pathway 2, EAP +1 language that will help your child settle into secondary school. So I'm going to talk about pathway 2 first. That's why it's in red. And this is when we suggest to you that you take EAP +1 language. And that could be French or Spanish or Chinese. Now, if you are a heritage speaker of Chinese, then you might choose to do Chinese Lang Lit, which is the level where you have already studied some Chinese, and we're improving your Chinese to the right level. There are various phases. A phase is just the level of Chinese that you have. If you do have Chinese as your heritage language, please do choose EAP and Chinese if that is what you would like to carry on with, because we strongly suggest that students are bilingual and strongly bilingual if they have heritage Chinese as well. If you are from a European background and you want to take French or Spanish as your other language, that is also an option. Pathway 1 is where you don't feel you need any EAP and you're going to take Chinese plus French or Spanish, or for some European students, they take French and Spanish and not Chinese. Chinese is really a strong language to have in this part of the world, and it's a very, very good idea to have that. Pathways 3 and 4, I think Maria Woods, my colleague, has already gone over that. If you've got any individual needs or any specific learning needs, then that is for you for 3 and 4. At the moment, I'm talking about the second pathway, which is taking EAP +1 language. And what does that mean? Okay. Now, some parents say, but surely Chinese is compulsory. It is not. At WIS, you would choose Chinese specifically. And once you've chosen Chinese, the Chinese teachers are very adept at noticing which level of Chinese you would have. So there's many, many levels. Chinese is a foreign language, which is Chinese acquisition. And then you have Chinese Lang Lit at various levels as well. So the Chinese teachers will be very quick to tell you which level you will be at. Okay, so this is usually the slide I get the most questions about. So please do note your questions. Let me explain it a little bit further. So if you take EAP and Chinese, but you have perhaps Korean or Japanese or Thai or Hindi as your mother tongue, as another language, please get in touch with us, because it is possible that you could do those languages in a private pathway as well. If you take EAP and French, for example, you might have another European language as a private pathway: Dutch, Italian, German, Russian, and so on. Okay, so we have actually had a lot of students take up their mother tongue outside of school, but they take Chinese, French, or Spanish within school. ESF Center have a provision where they centrally offer Japanese first language, Korean first language, and French first language to people who have an interest in those languages. And that is to make sure that they have a bilingual pathway as well. This is just based on the numbers of students who are wanting Japanese, Korean, or first language French. In the other language pathways, for example, if you wanted Swedish or Italian, we would help you to find perhaps some tutors that the ESF Center has on a list that they would recommend to you as taking a private language pathway. For school, EAP is something we suggest if you're strongly multilingual and would like to maintain that. Okay, so what does it mean to be bilingual and multilingual? If you're a bilingual, multilingual, parents who are on the webinar, you know you have a lot going on. You think in several languages, you have a lot happening in your head. You often know the words for something in one language and perhaps not in another. And we're really creative, quick thinking people if you're bilingual or multilingual. So in EAP, this diagram kind of explains how you are moving from primary school, where you've already got your concepts of how letters work, and then you are getting into how these other things work: reading comprehension, reading strategies, fluency, the concepts of print, especially vocabulary, which is what trips up lots of secondary school students. Text, structure, genres, this is academic language. So once you can understand how these things work in the central diagram here of how language is put together in print, in reading, in writing, and orally, then you are more likely to become that futures ready graduate at the IB diploma or the IBCP, which we so much want you to be, ready for university, ready for life, and hopefully ready for the world of work as well. So if you have a strong foundation, even in Chinese, because in Chinese, it's exactly the same diagram, except instead of the alphabet, you have basic characters. You have characters, and all of these things are exactly the same. So a strong first language gives you concepts for a strong second language. So we strongly recommend that your first language, your mother tongue, your early languages are strong, and that you start to develop them to an academic level. So all of those blocks in the center of my screen are all about academic language and how that works. Being strongly bilingual is a really, really sought after skill. It's the 21st century skill of the workplace. People who are looking at your CVs in the future will want that for you. In Asia, in Europe, being strongly bilingual is a proficiency that is highly required. Some other reasons to be multilingual and bilingual and how powerful it is. The research all suggests that is extremely good for your brain, flexibility, academic benefits to connect your concepts and your vocabulary across subjects, makes you more creative. As you know, it's a huge economic global advantage to have that on your CV, as I've said. It makes you aware of other people. We are a school that is aiming to develop global citizens, and having this awareness of other people and the way they think and their languages is really powerful. And last but not least, this really important family connection to make sure you know who you are. Are you able to communicate with your grandparents? Are you able to listen to their stories? Are you able to affirm who you are as a person, as a multilingual person, and also as a person who understands where they are from and how their language and heritage work? So this is really, really powerful. And parents, I think sometimes in our generation, we were given some very mixed up ideas about how bilingualism is good or not so good for you. And there is no question now that all of the research points to multilingualism being powerful and really, really strong for all users of language. So how many languages? Now, this is where it gets complicated, because how much time do we have? So this is our advice when you are now joining secondary school. You must have a strong mother tongue. You must have Chinese or your other languages as a mother tongue. What if you have two languages? Yes, you might have two languages in your background. Are you able to study both? Fantastic if you can. The second part is that we do use English at an international IB school as the language of communication and academics. And so, yes, you need to have your English, which is where EAP comes in to support you. And then, of course, you might want to study some languages as a foreign language or as a second or third language, and that's fine as well. And of course, you might want more languages for fun, for travel, and of course, the purpose of that is a little bit different. So do, as a family, consider if number 1 and 2 are secure for you. Have you got strong mother tongue or a language in your background? And do you have English to a level of academic proficiency as well? So there's lots of options. And yes, languages do open up the world for you. You've got the world in your hand if you know more than 2 languages. So this is really powerful stuff. I'm coming to the second part of my webinar now, which is what is academic literacy? And parents ask me this question every year. So I'm really hoping this becomes clear to say how and why do we call it academic literacy? It is really the language of thinking and how to think about your studying in that language. So students need to construct the language. They need to make meaning when teachers are speaking or there are presentations or webinars like this one. They need to show off that they understand what's going on. And that is where the language of assessment, which is basically the tests or assessments or projects or coursework. And all of that is related to academic achievement. So you know you've got academic literacy to a high level when everything makes sense to you. And when you think, okay, I know what is the difference between describe and explain. I know what is the meaning of the word illustrate as a command word. So those are some of the things that students need to do with their academic literacy. And this is the single greatest marker for student achievement, student well-being, students feeling happy in high school because they just get it. And I think when your teenager says, I get it, that's a real sign of victory for yourselves and as well as for us, that it all makes sense to them. So what is academic literacy again? Remember, your young people are learning the language through the language, which is the medium of the language, and they're also learning about the language. And this is really complex. Of course, they've been doing this at primary school as well, but now at secondary school, these 3 things happen at the same time. For example, they could be in a psychology class or a geography class where they're learning about rivers, for example, and they're learning about the different types of rivers, the different stages of the rivers, and they're also learning about how to put together a research presentation or a paper about rivers or a project about rivers, so that you can see that doing the 3 things at the same time. When these 3 little wheels click together and everything is working together, everything in learning goes very smoothly, things become very clear, and the student is enjoying it. When one of these is a little bit hard, not sure about the vocabulary, not sure about the homework, not sure how to do a presentation, then that's when you have the gears breaking down. And this is especially where we help with EAP, where you're not struggling at home with how do they want this presentation to be put together. We're able to explain that in EAP on how that genre works. So I hope that works pretty clearly so far. Why are people a bit worried about language these days? Well, as you all remember, we had those horrible times during COVID where your young people would probably have been in year 2, year 3, and those were early days of their literacy in primary school. It is possible that you were overseas. It's possible that you were away from Hong Kong. It's possible that, you had internet breakdowns and, some Zoom lessons were not attended or students just simply couldn't be on Zoom for some of that time. We've found at West Island, and I've been researching this for the last 2 or 3 years, is that the effects of online learning are still being felt in vocabulary, in writing, in the ability to connect some concepts. So basically, there were some gaps. And this is because schooling was interrupted for us all. It was difficult for teachers to do what I'm doing now on a Zoom. And this has led to students getting a little bit upset or a little bit disgruntled with their learning. And that can have an effect in secondary school as well. So if you see your student doing this, if you see your young person struggling, please do get in touch, because it's probably just a few gaps. And this is where in EAP, we're able to address those gaps, we're able to clarify those questions, and we're able to bridge that gap pretty quickly. So I'm now just quickly going to mention how we support the middle years program. So that big diagram on the left is really the full middle years program. And we've got EAP in the language acquisition part. We've got EAP support for language and literature. We've got in-class support for various of the subjects. We also have in year 9 some support for the community project, where students do the community project in an EAP group, and we consolidate that. And then we support the interdisciplinary learning across the subjects as well. And all of this is really important to building that core goal of the IB, is to create international mindedness, to create aware global citizens. And EAP really supports that whole idea, because when you're multilingual, you're already on your way to being a global citizen. But when you add the concepts and the IB vocabulary and the IB genres to it, then all of that becomes a very powerful combination. So what do we do in EAP? It's a very, very simple strategy that we use. We identify the objectives. What is it that students want to do? We look at what skills they will need to achieve that, that goal. And they could be micro goals, they could be massive GCSE goals. They're different skill indicators that tell us that this is where the gap is, or this is where what needs to be improved. We give students the strategies, the CALP skills, as we call them, the academic language proficiency skills, and then the students are able to apply those. And boom, we have some evidence of whether that skill has been internalized, has been learned, etc. We always say that skills are a little bit like riding a bike. You can't just read a book about riding a bike. To ride a bike, you have to get on, fall off a few times. And then when you get it, you absolutely get it. And whether it's riding a bike or swimming or rollerblading or skating, they're all skills. And all of those skills have strategies alongside. So that's really what we do in EAP. These are the approaches to learning, which I'm sure you've seen many, many times, but in the MYP, there are very, very specific skills related to being an effective learner. And we've got here all of the main ones: interacting, language, collaboration, creative and critical thinking, organization skills, and affective skills. So in EAP, we've got strategies to improve and develop these through, of course, the language. Because if you want to reflect on something, you've actually got to have the language to be able to use reflective language to show that off. And of course, that is part of self-management. It's also part of critical thinking. And we've got all those going on here. So you've got the macro skills: communication, social, research, self-management, and thinking. And once these are mastered, we find that students are really well on their way to using language to a very high degree. EAP units, we do the same units that other students do. They're not missing any units in any class, because students take English alongside EAP as well. And we use some of the genres, some of the ways of reading and writing. Do they know how to write a narrative? Are they able to write an argument? Are they able to understand how villains work in literature? Are they able to talk about the environment and understand scientific concepts around the environment? So we use a number of strategies to support parallel what is going on in lessons, so that students are directly able to transfer what they know into both their languages, ideally. So that's what the EAP units do in year 7. Now, why are we suggesting EAP for some students? If your students are in primary school, you can see that beautiful image of the tree. They haven't got very much stress or skill difficulties there, they're able to actually just continue. And if they fall out of that tree, it's not very difficult because it's primary school and things are very well supported. In secondary school, it's a much taller tree. And of course, if they're going to climb this tree, which is the curriculum tree of the MYP, IB, and GCSEs, then they need to make sure that we've got some harnesses and some nets. And as you know, when students are independent with their academic language, they are able to do their safety checks themselves and they're able to go climbing on their own, which is really, again, a skill. So this is just to illustrate as a metaphor the determination, the skill, and also the safety and support that you need to actually get through the academic climb ahead at secondary school. What we don't want to do is to make children worried or overwhelmed or stressed out by this whole process. This should be the fun part of schooling. This is where you see your teenager develop as a person, as a personality, and a young adult. So we really want to take away the stresses that might appear inevitably in this long, difficult climb with the academics. So some things that change at secondary school and why you might need some support, because they're coming from an environment where they've had one primary teacher or one main class teacher and just a few other teachers. They might suddenly have 14 or 16 new teachers. That can be really daunting. They might have a complex academic schedule, lots of PE, extracurricular activities, homework, and all of that becomes quite daunting. They might find that there are some new friends. Some of your children might be coming to us as the only person from their school. Nobody else is coming with them, and they might need to actually check in with some people. They might need to find a place to find friends. And basically, there is a very fast pace at secondary school. So things happen quickly. The day's quite busy. There might be activities and things they need to complete before the end of the week. So EAP is a way to actually say, where do I go? What do I do? I need to prepare for this. Who can help me? And this is a nice place to also find some friends. So I'm going to completely shut up now because I've been talking a lot. I want to get the students in. So here we have, I'll just introduce them on the slide and invite them to bring their cameras, put their cameras on and appear before us. We have Tasha and Brian, who are year 12 IB diploma students, and they have been right through the EAP program and very, very aware of how it's worked for them or not, as you might hear. Mimi and Stephanie are near 10. They're IGCSE students, and they've also taken some EAP along the way. Lucy, Prisha, Montes, and Avery are all in year 8, and so very close to the age group of your children. And they are going to talk a little bit about how the MYP works for them. So I'm going to stop sharing screen so that you can see their beautiful faces. Can everybody come on camera, please? There they are. Welcome, welcome, guys. Thank you so much for giving up a rainy Thursday afternoon to be here. I'm sure the parents and any young people watching in year 6 are really excited to see you. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and maybe we'll start with Stephanie, because you're just at the top of my screen, Steph. So there you are. Please introduce yourself, tell the parents what languages you speak, when you came to WIS, and why maybe. Okay.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ng. I speak both English and Chinese. I'm currently in year 10 and I joined in year 9.
Is it Prisha next? Yeah, Prisha.
Hey, I'm Prisha Sapre, and I speak 3 languages, in Hindi, Marathi, and English. And I'm currently in year 8 and I joined in year 7.
Is it Montes? You can introduce each other as you finish up. Montes, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Montes and I was born in Hong Kong. I speak 2 languages, English and Chinese, and my mother tongue is Cantonese.
Brilliant. Lucy?
I came to WIS in year 7, and I'm in year 8 right now.
Well done, Wantus. Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am born in Hong Kong and I speak Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. I joined WIS in year 7.
Mimi?
I'm Mimi, and I'm also a year 10 student that's raised in Hong Kong. I joined WIS when I was year 9, and now I'm year 10. My first language is Mandarin, but I speak English at school.
Brian?
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian, and I'm currently an IBDP student in year 12. I am born in Hong Kong, and I speak English, Mandarin, and Cantonese. And I joined West Island in year 7 in 2018.
Tasha?
I'm Tasha, and I'm in year 12 doing IBDP. I speak Cantonese, Mandarin, and English, and I came to West Island from 2 previous schools in year 10.
Avery, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Avery, and I came to WIS in year 7. I can speak English, Cantonese, and Mandarin, and I'm also learning Spanish in school and Japanese outside of school. I came from a local school, and I came to WIS because my previous school was really stressful, and my parents wanted me to experience a life where I can meet like really diverse people.
Thank you so much, Avery. So guys, I'm just going to throw out some questions, and if you feel you'd like to answer it, just jump in and unmute yourself when you're doing that. Could you share with our lovely audience what's a little bit fun, but also a little bit tricky about being multilingual, bilingual at an international school? And, you know, what are the things that you struggled with and then you found some ways around? Who would like to go first? Ryan, go for it.
Okay, so from my perspective, because West Island was a really new environment, there were a few things that challenged me. So initially, I found that it was very difficult to communicate with others because there's just so many people from different nationalities, from different backgrounds, whether it's social or economic, and there's just a big gap in the culture, and I just found it hard to make new friends. But as you grow with West Island and everyone else around you, you sort of make new friends, and you meet new people and you develop new communication skills, which in turn helps you make more connections with other people.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to jump in? Yes, Lucy.
For me it really changed a lot, as my old school we just kind of stayed in one classroom, but now in West Island School, we have to move from classroom to classroom. And also I was the only student from my primary school that came to WIS. And so I really had a lot of stress making friends.
Anybody else want to jump in? Wantus or Mimi? Oh, Prisha wants to go, yeah.
So like this school uses mostly practical work than textbook and notebooks, because in my old school we used to use textbooks and notebooks, and then we used to do those exams, but here it's just like more practical, so you can experience new stuff, you can take risks, experience new things. So yeah.
That's great. Would you like to give me some examples of something that you learned in EAP that was useful to transfer over to another subject, or you found that was really helpful and you knew how to do that now from the ATL or the CALP? Yes, Stephanie.
I really like the part where we learned note taking, because I found that it was like really helpful towards when doing assessments. I could apply different note taking skills I learned in class onto those, and I could find out which one worked best for me.
And which one works best for you, Stephanie?
I think the Cornell notes works best for me because I can summarize everything at the end, so I can like look back on my notes and like understand everything.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anybody else want to share a subject skill that you've gotten better at because you've transferred that over? Wanted.
So in EAP, my teacher taught me how to do a PEA paragraph, and then like
Do you
I
want to
think
say
a
what
few weeks
PEA
late,
is? Do you want to say what
it's
PEA is?
like point evidence analysis
Go ahead.
paragraph. And then like few classes later in INS, we were needed to do the EAP paragraphs, and I had a much better understanding of it.
Well done. Well done. PEA is something that everyone complains about to begin with, and it goes on and on right through secondary school, point, evidence, and analysis. And this is one of the hardest skills that I think even university students struggle with. So well done, Montes. You've got a great start in year 8. Anyone else want to jump in with a subject example? Ryan again, yes?
So in EAP, you learn a variety of skills. So in IGCSE, we developed our research and, as Stephanie mentioned before, our note-taking skills, and most importantly, our time management skills. So since IGCSE is a very time-consuming course that takes lots of effort and lots of planning to do, these skills are basically essential to learn for your success and for your good in the future. And as an IBTP student right now, those skills actually apply to me right now because in term 3, I also have some synoptic tests coming up, and I find myself using all those skills. Yeah, even right now. So yeah, those skills are very important.
Thank you. If anyone has got any more subject examples, can you tell us, has EAP been helpful in reducing stress and helping you find friends and finding a social, emotional, friendship group there? Avery?
I don't do EAP in school, but I take the EAP ambassador CAS. In one of the EAP ambassador CAS, I learned how to do like breathing exercise. And ever since that class, I started doing it like weekly. And it really helped me like improve my well-being, and like I feel like I have more control over myself.
Great. Tasha?
In EAP, you get to have like your own small group of people with similar needs where you can all help each other and rely on each other. And when I joined the school, I was in EAP, and it really helped me transition to West Island and gain confidence talking to other people. And yeah, it's just a really safe place because it's like small group and you can ask questions, and Ms Koshy is always there to support me. And yeah, you can ask anything without anxiety. So that's really helpful.
Fantastic. I wanted to also say that all of these guys are EAP ambassadors. EAP ambassadors is a CAS after school activity where students can come along and learn how to become leaders and how to support other students. So they're here to support P6 students. So take a good look at them, and hopefully they'll have some badges next year where they can let you know that they're available to support you. And this is a great leadership pathway. In the past, we've had head students who have been EAP ambassadors and have actually taken support right through their schooling career. So this is really powerful. Any final advice to our lovely P6 students and their parents who might be watching? How can you reassure them that things are going to be okay for them when they start in August? Any advice? Who would like to say something? So, yes, Mimi.
I would like to say that EAP is actually really helpful for you, and you can also meet a lot of people that are also like multilingual in EAP and can get to know them better and make more friends.
Great. Montes, do you want to say something to advise young people?
EAP is really fun, and you should take it because you also learn a lot of stuff, and you can also like engage more in social communities to help your English improve.
Okay. Anyone else want to reassure some people? Yes. Yes, Tasha first, then Brian.
I think it's important to know that the MYP is like a process for growth and development. And in EAP, we learn to take our mistakes that we make and use them as an opportunity to learn and grow. And like with the support of everyone and the teachers, I think it's really helpful through like many ups and downs you're bound to face during these few years. Yeah.
Ryan and then Mr. Houston. Yeah.
I feel like as a new student in West Island, I think the most important thing is to just enjoy your time in West Island. Obviously, your academics are important, but don't let that take over your life, because at the end of the day, learning is supposed to be fun, and it's also supposed to help you in life. So yeah, I feel like if you take EAP, it's a win-win situation for you, and yeah, just enjoy yourself.
Thank you guys. That was amazing. Avery, were you wanting to say something?
Lastly, I just wanted to add on that if any of you guys need help or want someone to talk to, we can always be out there and you can ask us for help.
They're a wonderfully generous group of students in EAP. So thank you, EAP ambassadors. Mr. Houston, you were going to give us some questions as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think before we move on to the questions, West Island students, I really want to thank you because just listening to it and imagining my own children who are joining West Island this year, you've given certainly them a lot of reassurance just in terms of the support that is there and the friendships that can be made. So just on behalf of all the parents that you can't see, just a huge thank you for your time this evening and the reassurance that you have given to us. So Ms. Koshy, are they staying online for the Q&A or are they able to head off?
They could do. If anyone needs to go, you're very welcome to say goodbye at this point. And thank you again for being on. And we've got just a couple of more questions from the that I had pre-prepared from parents. And if you want to stay on, you're very welcome. Did you want to put some questions?
So I've got some questions that have come in that I've not managed to answer live. So if we can just share those questions with you, Ms. Koshy, and then that will hopefully end our evening shortly. So one question that we had quite early on in the webinar, excuse me, is I will just simply read it out. I know that my child can take French or Spanish in year 7. If she can't cope with the language, can she switch to EAP in year 8?
It's a very simple answer. Yes, absolutely. But it's a good idea to start with EAP if you want to, but depending on what their language background has been or their experience, you can always have a chat about which is more appropriate. But yes, you can switch in year 8.
Great. And last Thursday, we had the IN webinar, which some parents may have also joined that are on this evening. And I have a parent just inquiring if their children do S4S through IN, which I know Miss Woods presented. Can they also access EAP support, and kind of how does that all work?
Well, actually, both EAP and S4S happened during the languages slots. So if they took EAP and S4S, then they would be missing out on a language. So if that is appropriate, that would be entirely possible. Otherwise, if they would like to take Chinese or French or Spanish as one language to carry on through secondary school, then we would advise you to perhaps seek EAP support through another avenue, like in-class support. So please do get in touch, and that's a conversation that Ms. Woods and I could have together about which one is most useful for the particular student.
Great. And who should they contact, Ms. Woods or yourself?
If the student has already chosen S4S, then I suggest contact Ms. Woods first, and then we can have a conversation about how we could provide some EAP support as well.
Great. And another question that came in just with regards to Japanese. So if their child doesn't want to study French or Spanish and wanted to study Japanese, is that an option, or how would that work?
We would suggest if they need to take one language at school, it's one of French, Spanish, or Chinese, and Japanese is offered by the ESF Center. So we would suggest one language within school and then Japanese through the ESF Center provision. If they need EAP, then they could do, for example, Chinese and EAP in school and then Japanese through the ESF Center provision, which is sometimes after school and sometimes just at the end of the school day, 3 to 4 o'clock.
Great. And a few more. We won't be much longer, but another question came in. Do parents choose EAP, or is it something that the teachers will support parents in that decision-making process?
So coming back to what I'd said at the beginning, which is you will get a letter tomorrow through the school, through West Island School, with a form that suggests, gives you an option of taking EAP, that you choose that within the form. I strongly suggest you choose EAP plus one language in that form. If you don't get a letter and you would like to just carry on with 2 languages and you've already chosen them, then it is possible that teachers might notice that somebody could benefit from some EAP, and teachers might refer your student to us, in which case we'll get in touch and have a conversation about how best to do that.
Great. And 2 more, and then I think we'll finish for the evening. So the first one is, does West Island School assess the English level for their Year 7 English pathway? Is it possible to answer that? I appreciate it.
I know. Well, actually, there was a question earlier as well about whether EAP is instead of English lessons. It is not. Yeah. EAP is in the modern languages slot, so that's why you take one language in EAP. So English lessons carry on as normal. And yes, English teachers do assess in the first few months. And if they notice that somebody would benefit from some EAP, then they will get in touch with yourselves and with me, and we'll work that out as we go along. I just have, I think, just a final couple of slides, Mr. Hewson, just to kind of say that there are multiple pathways and no 2 students are the same. So please just, be confident that we will choose the ideal pathway for your student. These were the questions that came in beforehand through BJ and the registration. So people said, for a 3rd language beginner, does pre-learning need to be done, and are there advanced courses? Yes, there's IGCSE pathways and the IB diploma. So those offer courses for bilingual students. Someone asked, how do we overcome the disadvantages for children growing up in a bilingual environment and they're not good at either? Here's my position, which I've stuck to for the last 25 years. No child growing up in a bilingual environment is ever disadvantaged long term. It's always an advantage. The difference between just conversational language and academic language we talked about, that may cause some confusion early on, but EAP resolves many of these right away. Someone asked if their daughter reads a lot, but she sometimes reads a book 2 or 3 times to fully understand it. How could we improve that? First of all, if a student enjoys reading, rejoice, fantastic. She has a reading habit, and bilingual students often read things more than once to get something out of each reading. So please encourage that, and speed, of course, develops over time. So nothing to worry about there at all. So some parents will receive, Mr. Hewson, this language form that will come out through Mr. Souza in the office. And please submit that EAP plus language form by the 3rd of June, if you could, so that we can get in touch and work out any needs that you might have for your family. And we would, if you get this letter, it's based on things that we found out from your NGRT test that you might have done to join an ESF school. It might be from primary school information from our chats to people at Kennedy and other primary schools. So please rest assured that, our recommendation for EAP is not a deficit in any way. Okay.
Great. That's a fantastic presentation, Ms. Koshy. And just if I can invite all the students that were or still are online, just to come back on the screen. Ms. Koshy, if you can stop sharing your screen, that'd be great. I know that some students have had to disappear off, probably with other commitments. So students, can I just thank you very much for giving, as I said earlier, some really great reassurance to our parents and any Year 6 children that are watching us. So thank you very much. You will get a virtual applause through the screen right now. And Ms Koshy, also thank you to you for
Thank you.
hosting and leading us through that presentation. For parents that are online, just a few quick things from me. So Friday next week, the 31st of May, your children are coming in for their final visit before they join us as Year 7 students after the summer holidays. You've got all the information, but if you just need a few brief details, then children, you should be arriving about 9 o'clock for a 9 a.m. start. You can come anywhere between about 8:30 and 9 a.m. and the day finishes for your children at 2:15 p.m. If your children are Kennedy students, then at the end of the day, they will be walking back to Kennedy School with the Kennedy School staff so that you can get the Kennedy buses and you will be dismissed from there. If you are not Kennedy children, if parents, you can arrange to pick your children up from school, that would be absolutely great. And then for parents, the evening starts on the 31st of May at 6 o'clock, and it should finish no later than 7:30 p.m. There are some snacks, just so you've got a bit of something to eat, and they're very kindly provided by our fantastic PTA. And for parents as well, if you would like to purchase some pre-loved school uniforms, then the PTA is selling those in our on-site school shop between 2:30 and 5:30 p.m. So if you want to come and have a look and try on some uniform, then that is an option for you. And in addition to Ms Koshy's letter coming out tomorrow, we are also sending out your child's dynasty letter. So it will indicate what dynasty or house your child is in. So please look out for those letters. And it does have the details that I've just mentioned with regards to your child's visit and the evening presentation and welcome from school staff. Okay, so thank you very much, parents, for your
Thank you,
attention this
everyone.
evening. Thank you, students, again for your time. And our parents, I wish you a lovely evening. And we look forward to seeing you all next Friday. And thank you to VJ in the background, who will end the webinar.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Bye. Bye, students.